Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just jump right in, because today we are tackling one of the absolute most critical challenges of our modern era. We're looking at this massive, incredibly complex mission of bridging the gap between market-driven private sector security and our overarching national defense. I mean, think about it. How do we actually keep our nation's most vital systems safe when the people who own those systems are naturally driven by business metrics and not necessarily national security ones? To figure this out, we are pulling our insights directly from a highly authoritative source. This is the draft report to the president by the National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee, or NSTAC. So what we're looking at here is the top-tier advice being given to the absolute highest levels of government on how to actually measure, and more importantly, incentivize the adoption of cybersecurity best practices across the entire country. And it really all starts with this incredibly provocative question. If the global cybersecurity market is just booming, I mean, we're talking projected to exceed $1.75 trillion between 2021 and 2025, why does it feel like our critical infrastructure is more vulnerable than ever? It's a total paradox, right? We are spending massive amounts of money as a society, yet we're seeing these escalating, high-profile breaches almost weekly. So, to systematically answer that question, we're going to break this comprehensive report down into 6 clear pillars: the national security gap, carrots over sticks, untangling red tape, making metrics matter, the human element, and finally, the future of cyber defense. All right, starting with part 1, the national security gap. This is really the core vulnerability here. Look, we basically have to look at 2 completely different ways of calculating risk. On one side, you have business risk tolerance. The private sector owns the vast majority of our critical infrastructure, right? And when they invest in cybersecurity, they use standard business math. They're looking at return on investment, protecting the bottom line, managing commercial risk. But on the other side, the government has a national security risk tolerance. Their main concern is societal continuity and, literally surviving coordinated attacks from hostile nation states. The really crucial point here is that standard business math simply does not account for defending against a massive nation-state attack. An investor just isn't going to pay for that level of security if it doesn't offer a commercial return. And that right there creates a massive material delta. It's a huge gap between what the free market naturally provides and what our national security actually requires. And the real-world consequences of this gap? They are severe. When basic cyber hygiene isn't universally incentivized, we see some truly devastating results. I'm sure we've all seen the headlines. The Colonial Pipeline disruptions that literally caused fuel shortages, the Scattered Spider Group using surprisingly simple social engineering to trick IT help desks at MGM and Caesars, or how about hackers exploiting weak default passwords on internet-facing programmable logic controllers to take over municipal water systems? And we've even seen Russian state-sponsored actors exploiting vulnerable Cisco network routers long after patches were actually available. These aren't always wildly sophisticated movie plot hacks, They're the devastating consequences of unaddressed basic vulnerabilities. Moving on to Pillar 2. Carrots over sticks. It's all about positive reinforcement. The report actually states this super clearly. Organizations respond better to carrots than sticks. For a really long time, the government's approach has leaned heavily on regulatory punishment, the sticks. But while punishments can definitely force compliance, they often make the private sector view the government as an adversary rather than a partner. So to get the private sector to invest way beyond their standard business risk, we need a massive psychological and economic shift toward positive reinforcement. So what do these carrots actually look like? Well, the report recommends some highly impactful financial and legal incentives. We're talking about real market-based economic incentives like tax deductions and federal grants, specifically earmarked for organizations that adopt cybersecurity best practices. On top of that, the government needs to vastly expand outreach for free resources like CISA's Cyber Hygiene Services and the NSA's Cyber Collaboration Center. But honestly, perhaps the most important thing here is the call for strict liability safe harbors. Right now, if a company gets breached, sharing that threat intelligence can instantly lead to lawsuits, massive regulatory fines, and public shaming. It's a nightmare. By offering real legal protections and anonymizing shared data, the government can encourage this culture of radical transparency, where companies proactively share threat intel without the constant fear of ruin. Okay, part 3, untangling red tape, or as it's perfectly described, the regulatory alphabet soup. If you work in this field, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Today's cybersecurity professionals are just drowning in an overlapping, completely chaotic alphabet soup of regulations. I mean, you've got SEC rules for public companies, DFARS for defense contractors, PCI standards for payment cards, a patchwork of state laws like California CCPA, plus various international frameworks. Complying with all of these duplicative requirements just drains massive amounts of time, budget, and human resources. Instead of actually hunting threats or, improving security, teams are stuck checking different boxes for different auditors who are essentially asking for the exact same controls just in slightly different ways. So, the absolutely crucial question becomes, how do we untangle this regulatory alphabet soup? How do we stop wasting so many resources on redundant compliance? Well, the NSTAC report offers a clear and, frankly, very powerful solution. Anchor all cybersecurity requirements to the NIST cybersecurity framework, specifically version 2.0. The recommendation is to basically harmonize all federal, state, and industry requirements right into this single repeatable baseline. If an agency wants to issue a new cybersecurity requirement, fine, but they should have to map it directly to the NIST framework first. This would radically simplify compliance across the board, finally allowing organizations to focus their precious budgets on actual security outcomes rather than just managing red tape. Which brings us to Pillar 4, making metrics matter. This is about moving to quantitative metrics and measuring success correctly. This is a big one because the industry frequently falls into a major trap, which is basically just bad math. A lot of organizations use these things called ordinal scales, basically subjective ratings, like a 1 for not started all the way up to a 4 for implemented. The problem is, organizations try to average these out, leading to completely nonsensical maturity scores like 2.37. What does a security posture of 2.37 even mean? Literally nothing. It suffers from what experts call range compression, and it absolutely does not tell a business leader how much risk they're actually reducing. The report strongly advocates shifting away from that and moving to quantitative metrics. These are measurements that are mathematically defensible and directly tied to business outcomes. Look, security metrics shouldn't just exist in an IT vacuum, right? They have to help business leaders make smart, risk-based decisions on where to allocate their limited budgets. To actually lead this charge, the report recommends establishing a Cybersecurity Measurement Center of Excellence right within the Department of Commerce. The goal here is pretty fascinating. Start treating cyber statistics exactly like we treat economic statistics. By bringing together data scientists, domain experts from CISA, and statisticians, we can systematically collect and analyze data. We can even leverage anonymized data from cyber insurance firms to figure out exactly which security practices actually work in the real world and which ones are just noise. All right, Pillar 5, the human element. We have to address the gap. 750,000, just let that number sink in for a second. That is the estimated number of unfilled cybersecurity jobs in the United States right now. The demand is just far, far exceeding our supply, and honestly, it's leading to severe cyber burnout among the professionals who are currently holding the line. Time and time again, a lack of qualified personnel is consistently cited as the single biggest barrier to adopting security best practices. So how do we fix it? The NSTAC report recommends tackling this shortage head-on with some pretty innovative solutions. One major proposal is establishing virtual national cyber academies. Imagine providing free, top-tier training in exchange for government or critical infrastructure service. They also propose a cyber corps. This would mean mobilizing retired or volunteer computer security experts to assist smaller businesses that simply can't afford full-time security staff. Furthermore, actually solving this crisis requires tapping into diverse and neurodiverse talent pools. Different perspectives foster innovation and much better problem solving, which is exactly what we need to outsmart modern adversaries. Building a healthy, truly inclusive security culture isn't just good HR, it's literally a leading indicator of strong cyber resilience. And finally, Pillar 6, the future of cyber defense, the grand challenges. The report suggests launching these national grand challenges to really spur rapid innovation in a few key areas. First up, we absolutely must leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning. AI can analyze vast data sets for anomalies way faster than any human ever could. This automates threat detection and helps to democratize complex security tools so even understaffed teams can benefit. The second grand challenge, securing open source software. Most of the digital world runs on open source code, which is fantastic for rapid innovation, but it carries these massive hidden supply chain risks. We need major national efforts to improve the quality and security of this code without bogging down the very innovation that makes it so valuable in the first place. So let's bring it all together. To summarize what we've covered in this explainer, first, we absolutely must align market-driven business risk with our national security needs. We have to implement financial carrots and liability protections to encourage that radical transparency we talked about. We've got to cut the red tape by simplifying compliance right down to the NIST CSF 2.0 framework, and we absolutely must invest in our human workforce while simultaneously leveraging the immense power of AI. Together, these structured recommendations are what will ultimately bridge the gap from critical vulnerability to true national resilience. I want to leave you with this final thought today. Are we prepared to align our market incentives with our ultimate national security needs before the next major attack hits? Because the blueprints, they're right here in this report. The only real question is whether we have the collective will to actually implement them. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and as always, stay secure.